It's a house on a hill 3 blocks from the beach with probably one of the worst yards in the neighborhood. I'm David Phillips, and 18 months ago, my wife, daughter, and I moved here from South Florida. For 18 months, we've lived with a landscape that consisted of nothing more than a dead lawn.
You know, I did hear about xeriscaping a yard, but I don't know how to even begin with that.
Hey, are you talking about the plants in front of the yard?
Yeah, we are. We'd like to get something that would look nice for a change. Xeriscape, that's where you don't use any water?
Well, you use water for the period of establishment.
We had to learn which plants were drought tolerant and which were appropriate for our site. We'd found some great booklets from the Water Management District and our utility, which got us started. We also used books from the library.
There was this little pamphlet on how to design a WaterWise landscape.
Yeah. We started looking at natural areas close to our home. Right across the street, we found examples of lots of native plants.
Look, there's one.
A neighbor pointed out many we could use in our
Are
landscape.
you looking for the coral bean?
Yes, this is it, isn't
I
it?
found one.
Oh,
Yes.
great.
They grow in South and Central Florida, and the ruby-throated hummingbirds use them for food as they migrate north.
Oh, you see this?
That's the asparagus fern. It's very invasive. See how it's spread all through here? You don't want that.
Definitely not.
The slope of our front yard was of a great concern to us. When we watered the lawn, rivers of water would cascade down the slope. We needed a landscape that would keep our front yard from eroding away. With that in mind, we began to list the plants and shrubs that would be used in our WaterWise landscape.
That's the last thing.
I see.
And that's when you decide what you're going to put in, how you're going to put it in, and that's probably where we need the most help.
In our research, we discovered that a professional landscape architect uses a small variety of plants to create an eye-pleasing yard. Their formula is 8 types of shrubs, 2 ground covers, and 2 species of trees. A professional knows to mass plants of the same species together to create an effect. We kept that formula in mind as we began to sketch out our plan.
Do is put the Florida privet and the Simpson stopper up here, so you might as well draw it in. And they said to use like a sweeping mass planting.
We used a tracing paper overlay of the site plan of our house. We tried to keep the plan on a scale of 1 inch equaling 10 feet. Our house didn't have an existing irrigation system, so we didn't need to take that into account when coming up with our design. But for houses with existing systems, you should keep zones in mind. Dividing plants that need watering once a week from those needing twice a week watering is extremely important in a WaterWise landscape. More on the system we chose a bit later. After sketching out the plan, we started to look for the plants. But most of the nurseries in our area don't stock the native plants we were looking for. An internet search led us to David Driley's nursery in Christmas.
Hello,
How you doing?
David Driley.
Good to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
We brought along a plan today
Oh, look at this.
that I thought maybe you could help us with.
Well, look forward to doing so. Why don't we look at a few plants in the nursery and maybe that'll help us make our decisions.
Okay, great.
Here there are acres and acres of plants native to Central
Well, I see
Florida.
on the plan you intend to use quite a bit of the mullygrass, and right here we have the pink muley. It's a very drought tolerant and durable native grass that does grow along the coastline. It has a bright plume, pinkish plume, in the fall, and I think you'll be very happy with that one.
I think we've actually seen them.
Another one is the dune sunflower, and that you've chosen as one of your ground cover plants. And again, is very drought tolerant, salt tolerant.
After a walk through the nursery, David sat down with us to look over the plan and give us some advice.
The original bed line for the coontie ended here into the planter bed, and I think we may see a little better flow by turning the bed line before the planter box and coming down right to the driveway. Okay. Then we've got a nice dark green line here as you come up the steps, as you view the house from the curb. I think the mullygrass, I like the idea of the beautyberry, and perhaps the beautyberry is the plant that is here.
Okay.
And this would be the beautyberry. And then this area, all the way down to these ground covers, this could all be the mullygrass.
Oh, okay.
And this is your existing cabbage palm. Now, I would also like to include perhaps some additional maritime forest trees planted here in the front that would blend nicely with the existing cabbage palm.
From the research we'd done, our plan was actually on the right track. So this is something you can do on your own. But if you want professional help, the American Society of Landscape Architects has listings of landscaped architects in your area. Over the next hour, David explained how the landscape would go together and what plants we would need to finish the project. We set up delivery for the following Monday. Now things were really beginning to move quickly. Monday morning, David's truck arrived with all of the plants we'd selected. He spent a bit more time with us fine-tuning the plan. He even gave us some advice on how to kill what was left of the existing lawn. What about all this grass? We have an awful lot of grass here.
How do we remove it?
Well, you have some grass and weeds. This is crabgrass. It's one of the worst things in the world. There's St. Augustine left over. I understand you turned the irrigation system off, and the St. Augustine just died shortly after that. Well, I'm glad you're not feeding the St. Augustine with water unnecessarily. The landscape plan should provide a low water use solution. But we need to get rid of all of these weeds and grass. There's a couple of ways to do that. One is to put newspaper out on the ground. You can do that and then just go ahead and plant right through the newspaper. Another way is to spread clear plastic and let the sun cook the weeds underneath the plastic. And
how long would that take?
The plastic may take a week or two to kill the weeds. A third solution would be to use Roundup. It's available locally, and it's easy to spray on, but then again it takes a week or two to do its to kill the weeds.
He decided
as well.
against using chemical herbicides, even though all the experts say they are safe and effective. The idea of putting plastic down and baking the lawn and weeds seemed too time-consuming, so we decided to dig them out by hand. The next issue was the slope of the front yard. Remember those pictures of the water running off the slope instead of soaking into the soil? Any landscaping we put in needs water, so we needed to come up with a way to keep the water in the soil. One idea was terracing the yard, but we quickly dismissed it after finding how much it would cost. Once again, it was David Driley to the rescue. He showed us an additive we could spray on the soil that would make the water soak in rather than run off. He also suggested spraying some regular dishwashing detergent on the ground to improve water retention. It worked like a charm. Now it was time for the planting. First, we put the plants on the ground according to the plan. Then it was time to plant and water them in. To help the larger plants get enough water, we created a little dam all the way around the plant. This kept the water where it was needed and allowed it to soak deeper into the soil. The first watering is all important, and we spent a lot of time hand watering in, particularly the shrubs. Once the plants were in, it was time to install the irrigation system. Even a WaterWise landscape needs water for the period of establishment, which may be from 6 to 9 months. Since our landscape didn't call for any turf, we chose a drip irrigation system. It places the water right at the base of each plant, ensuring more water gets to the plant and less evaporates. There are many do-it-yourself kits for drip irrigation systems, but we chose the irrigation contractor route. It was money well spent. These guys had the system laid out and installed in just a few hours. The contractor said it was important to install a filter at the front of the system to prevent hard water minerals from building up in the system over time and clogging the emitters. Now that the irrigation was in, it was time to mulch. Most landscapes in Florida use cypress mulch, but our research showed that cypress is not a good choice anymore. The old-growth cypress that had heartwood with that famous insect resistance has long been logged out. The small cypress doesn't have that resistance, Pine bark is recommended, and pine straw is even better. But we chose to go with eucalyptus mulch, which we'd used before in South Florida and knew to be insect resistant.
I love the way it looks. The yard was a real disaster, and every time I came home, I used to cringe because I had to look at it. And now when I come home, I'm really pleased with what has happened.
The hardest part was getting started. Once we actually got started, it really wasn't that hard at all. We did have to rip up the old grass, which is not really much fun, but it's not that hard either. And once it's done, it's done. It goes relatively fast. Then you start putting in the new plants. You put in the irrigation system, and then you mulch it. It looks great, and once you get started, that's the hardest part.
I did not expect it to look this good. I had no idea how it would all look together, but I'm really shocked. I really am. I didn't know that I could do a WaterWise landscape and have it look so good.
Water's like gold. You know, in the old days it was out of sight, out of mind, but now as populations increase, they're not making any more water. What we've got is what's been here all along, so we need to be finding better ways of using it, utilizing it before we just send it on.
There are over 14 million people residing in Florida today. By the year 2020, nearly 20 million people are expected to be living in the state. Nearly 80% of our population lives in the state's coastal counties.
When you get to the coast, you start facing water problems. Our water resources are much more limited, much more finite, much more susceptible to man's abuses. We have saltwater intrusion problems. We've seen tremendous well drawdowns in some coastal areas, particularly up in the Panhandle. We're facing water shortages in the coastal areas where the people are and where the people are coming.
A constant usable freshwater supply is being consumed by an exploding population in our state. This imbalance will lead to more widespread water shortages if left unchecked. Fortunately, there are solutions in Florida. One of those has been growing in use for several decades. We're talking about the reuse of reclaimed water.
If we don't use reclaimed water, we're going to see continued and increased water shortages. The use of reclaimed water as a non-potable water supply for irrigation types of activities simply makes an awful lot of sense.
Reclaimed water is water from our wastewater treatment plants that is treated to make it suitable and safe for a beneficial use. Over 400 million gallons of reclaimed water are being used daily in Florida, generated from over 400 treatment facilities. In communities like St. Petersburg, Destin, Gainesville, Naples, Palm Beach County, Titusville, and Orlando, reclaimed water use continues. The use of reclaimed water has grown rapidly in popularity in Florida, and the state has become a national leader in reuse. Reclaimed water is being used in the creation of wetlands, cooling towers of power plants, to wash and clean buses at the Walt Disney World Resort, for water needs of citrus growers, for irrigation of soybeans, hay, and wheat, for irrigation of golf courses, and even for watering of residential lawns. The process for generating reclaimed water occurs at the treatment plant.
This is recycling at its best. We're actually taking a product that used to be discarded, was considered a waste and a pollution source, and actually turning it into a resource.
Secondary treatment, filtration, and high-level disinfection at the plant fulfill Florida Department of Environmental Protection rules for treatment of water to be reused as reclaimed water. Wastewater from our homes enters the plant at an influent or entrance area, where it passes through screens, and then it is agitated or aerated. Upon separation of the liquids and solids, the water is then filtered and disinfected to produce sparkling clean reclaimed water.
It passes through a series of baffles, our chlorine contact chamber, which ensures a long enough contact time to promote this good disinfection and again to maintain that high chlorine residual.
What we do is we supply a chlorine solution to the liquid leaving the treatment plant, which kills any pathogen viruses which might still be living in the system that have made it through the treatment process. That chlorine has a residual when it leaves here.
In treatment plants, the water is thoroughly tested to make sure it is safe for use around human activities.
We test for turbidities, we test for suspended solids, we test for the pH of the water leaving, we test for the chlorine residual of the water leaving.
In addition, facilities monitor for fecal coliforms, an indicator organism, to ensure the safety of the water, and all monitoring data is carefully reviewed by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
We're trying to make sure that it doesn't have pathogens in it, viruses, bacteria, parasites, anything that can cause human disease. We want to make sure that the regulations are there to ensure that wherever that water goes, that it's safe for human activities around there.
Knowing that his agency, the Florida Department of Health, helps in statewide monitoring of the epidemiological criteria for reclaimed water, and knowing there has never been a public health case linked to reclaimed water, Dr. Hunter favors the use of reclaimed water.
Well, I do favor the use of reclaimed water for a number of reasons. One, it's environmentally sound. It keeps water from being treated to a level that is beyond its need. It takes the load off of receiving waters and our natural resources, and so it makes a lot of sense in that regards. The other reason I favor it is that it can be done safely.
Reclaimed water in Florida provides a safe recycled supply of water that can be used for numerous purposes, like power plants in Central Florida that don't have surface waters to draw from for their needs.
We're a landlocked site. We don't have surface waters of large quantities that we can use. So the reclaimed water is an excellent source for us to use. It's economical. It's of a quality that we don't have to treat it any further. We can use it directly as it comes to us.
The plant generates power for over 200,000 homes and consumes about 7 million gallons of reclaimed water a day out of a 90-acre reclaimed water pond as it's received from a nearby treatment plant. Reclaimed water is used in two 450-foot-high cooling towers.
Basically, the design of the tower is hyperbolic. It's designed that way, the shape of it, so that you get airflow drawn up through the bottom of the tower out the top. It's air that cools the water. The water that you see cascading down is being contacted with the air as it's getting sucked up into the tower.
The reclaimed water from the cooling towers goes back over to the boilers in the power generation process.
The circulating water is a primary function of it is to cool the steam that's coming off of the turbine back to water so we can reuse it back in the boiler cycle.
At Walt Disney World near Orlando, Reclaimed water is used to irrigate world-class resorts, golf courses, and their athletic sports complex. The state-of-the-art award-winning Reedy Creek Improvement District wastewater treatment facility processes millions of gallons of valuable reclaimed water daily.
On the average, we bring in about 11 million gallons a day of wastewater, and of that, about 4 million gallons a day is sent out as public access reuse, used primarily for irrigation. The remaining 7 million gallons a day is sent out to our rapid infiltration basins where it's used for groundwater recharge.
Part of the reclaimed water coming from the Reedy Creek Improvement District wastewater treatment facility is used to irrigate grasses and plants for Disney's Animal Kingdom. Even though Florida gets 55 inches of rain annually, there are dry periods in the spring and fall, and without irrigation of the exotic Animal Kingdom plants,
we obviously, in Florida sandy soils, we would lose our plant material. The root systems just wouldn't be able to handle the drought conditions because we've introduced plants from all over the world here, and they wouldn't be able to handle these sandy soil conditions, and they would end up dying.
Irrigation is vital for these plants, as they are an integral part of the recreation of animal habitat Disney uses in the Animal Kingdom.
We plant these plants out on the safari to make it look like you're in Africa when you're riding the ride vehicle. We're trying to create an African savanna, Serengeti in a portion of it, and just general Africa grasslands and other areas.
Whether to and from the Animal Kingdom or other theme parks, Disney uses mass transit, which includes brightly painted buses, to transport its guests. Reclaimed water cleans up to 300 of these buses per day. The bus enters the wash area and
from then, the bus continues on and activates the agitator brushes on the side and on the top. Continuing on with the pre-wash with the soap. It continues on, activates a sensor that we have in the floor of the wash facility, which activates the brushes that wash the wheels, which is also a mixture of reclaimed water and soap. And the final run is yet one more sensor that activates the fresh water that gives the bus its rinse.
Golfers are drawn to lush golf courses at Disney, but also to hundreds of other courses located around the state. Over 300 courses are being irrigated with reclaimed water. Conserve 2, a cooperative water reuse program between the city of Orlando and Orange County, irrigates the Orange County National Golf Course in the western edge of the county. Reclaimed water for fairways and greens saves millions of gallons in fresh water not needed from the aquifer, and saves course operators significant money that would be needed for fresh water if it were used.
We would have to spend thousands of dollars upon a pump system per 18 holes of golf facility. The economics behind this is the fact that we don't have to spend the money upon the parts and supplies to have a pump station and to use and pay for the water.
With over 50 inches of annual Florida rainfall, why irrigate the course too?
There are times of the year where we get 60 days of no rain, which we've seen just recently. That would affect us just in the fact that we would lose the grass that we have out here upon the facility. If it rained a quarter of an inch every day, 365 days a year, we'd be perfect, but we also know that Mother Nature doesn't work that way.
The Orange County National Golf Center is surrounded by citrus groves in the central part of the state. Conserve 2's 43-mile pipeline distribution network provides reclaimed water to over 11,000 acres of citrus groves. At the distribution center,
this center acts as the control point. They monitor the water coming in, the amount of water leaving the facility. They open and close valves. They direct water to the different rapid infiltration basins, and they coordinate with the growers to see that we have water available at the times that they're looking for irrigation.
Reducing the use of fresh water from deep wells for citrus irrigation, Conserve 2's reclaimed water is dependable.
This water is available to them 365 days a year. It's available to them 24 hours a day. It's available to them at a usable pressure, so they save money by using this water. There's also some residual nutrients in it, nitrogen and phosphorus, which offsets some of their fertilizer cost.
To have the availability of water has helped us make a decision to stay in the citrus business in this area. we have gradually lost a lot of acreage up here, but having this consistent supply of water has helped us decide to replant a grove right across the way from the Conserve 2 plant, 100 acres that we're in the process of replanting.
Irrigation with reclaimed water is a must in these sandy soils, which lose moisture quickly.
And so irrigation is necessary for us if you're going to have a grove. Your production will be higher year after year after year where you can irrigate versus non-irrigated groves. Now in some areas where you have heavy soil, you can get by. The trees kind of get acclimated to it. But in this sandy soil, irrigation is well-nigh a necessity.
Citrus is not the only crop reclaimed water is being used on for irrigation purposes. In the panhandle of the state, Florida's capital city, Tallahassee, irrigates over 2,000 acres of farmland used for fields of soybeans, corn, coastal Bermuda grass, and other feed and fodder crops.
The center pivot is a mechanical pipeline that's being driven by electric motors that's distributing water through the length of the pipeline. The average pivot out here is 1,250 feet long. The average flow through the pivot is 1,450 gallons a minute, which comes out to a little over 2 million gallons a day. We have 13 center pivots on site that, depending on our flow, which is 17 million a day, we generally run 10 pivots a day to maintain that volume of flow through the center pivot.
In addition to commercial and agricultural uses of reclaimed water, demand for residential lawn irrigation is growing throughout Florida. One such area is Altamont Springs.
Well, we've had widespread acceptance. The people love it. Once the original lines were put out and some of the neighborhoods had seen the kind of results they were getting from using reclaimed water for irrigation, they were clamoring to try to get it into their neighborhood.
Why do individual homeowners want to use the reclaimed water?
Well, I think there's two reasons for that. First, you save money on not purchasing potable water, and second, you conserve potable water. There's no need to use drinking water quality for this application.
And how do Ammerman's neighbors feel about using the reclaimed water for irrigation?
They like it, they use it, they don't think about it that much. It really has become part of what they do, of the products that are available to them. So they don't go out and turn on the sprinkler and say, well, that's reclaimed water, although they are very happy not to be buying potable water, and they're very pleased with the results they get from the city.
As Florida's freshwater supplies remain constant in size, and yet the state's population continues to grow rapidly, creating a higher demand for potable water from aquifers, we must continue to use the valuable resource known as reclaimed water in helping to ease the stress on freshwater supplies. Every drop of reclaimed water counts. Counts in usage that prevents further drawdown on our aquifers. The uses are varied, from power plants to golf courses, citrus groves, to feed and fodder crops, and theme parks to residential lawns. We have the technology, we have the resource. It is our responsibility to be good stewards of this critical resource for our future needs.
If we had not implemented the reclaimed water system, I dare say that we would have we'd be pumping more than twice as much water out of the ground now that we're now able to save. We probably save on the order of 2 billion gallons a year reclaiming the water as opposed to pumping that same 2 billion gallons out of the aquifer.
Reclaimed water is very usable, it's very efficient, it's economical, and we should be using it.
We can use this resource safely and effectively to take care of our agricultural needs, our landscaping needs, and at the same time replenish the groundwater aquifer.
The water that we used on our groves had, before Conserve 2, come from lakes, surface water, and wells. So as we switch from wells to this water, it's that much less water that has to be drawn out of the aquifer. And it just makes sense to use the water over and over again.
At some point, somebody looked over and said, why are we throwing this resource away? We've got non-potable demands. We can use this water for it. We can use it right now, and not only that, it's cheaper than anything else we've got.
Water is limited and precious. Reuse of reclaimed water is safe, economical, and offers opportunities to conserve water and replenish valuable aquifers. Reuse simply makes sense for Florida. Let's make every drop count. So use it again, Florida.